Tesla, Elon Musk, please don't do what Apple has done over and over and over again. Please license your technology for your power plug, for the good of society and for the good of you and your customers. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So I know I probably think about this way too much, but I can't help myself. And actually it's kind of my MO, right? That's what I do. I tend to overthink a lot of things. But I have thought over the years that Apple has made many mistakes in terms of not licensing their hardware interfaces. They've done things like their Thunderbolt connector, which is actually kind of USB-C now, but it was like this weird proprietary thing. And they've had the mag connector for their PowerBooks, even things as way back as SCSI, which was, oh gosh, small computer systems interface, I think, and also FireWire, et cetera. So anyway, they've had a lot of architectures that they have failed to license to the public rapidly enough for it to really matter, and other people have come in with actually poorer standards, like the USB standard, at least the original one, was actually poorer than what Apple was using at the time, but it was available to everybody, and so that took over. The same thing now with our phones. We have these lightning connectors where that's great, but now everybody else uses USB-C for everything else, and so Apple should have licensed the lightning connector to all other companies, rather than have waited until it was too late and now they're the only ones standing who have that particular technology that they use. So anyway, what am I talking about in terms of Tesla? What I'm talking about is the charging plug. Tesla has a very straightforward and simple charging plug. It's basically got the two leads and a ground. That's it. It's a very small connector. If you look at a lot of these other connectors, they're very large comparatively speaking. They're very clunky, they're very cumbersome. Of course, if you're at home, you can install whatever for your automobile, right? But when you're traveling, what we want is we want something that's standardized, like I talk about, like the unleaded fuel, right? It's just got a circle that's this big or whatever, and you put that in your gas tank and it fits, and that's great. And if you have, I believe like the older one for leaded gasoline was a different size, and I'm pretty sure that diesel is a different size as well too. But anyway, so they tend to correlate with the type of gasoline you're allowed to use. But the good part about all of that, of course, is that you can go to any gas station anywhere and you can utilize that plug and it will fill up your gas tank. At least in the United States, that is not at all the case here right now. There are many different types of connections. And what I'm suggesting is that when you travel, you should just be able to utilize one type of connection. And honestly, it'd be better just for home too, if everyone would just standardize on one connection. And my contention is that Tesla's got the best type of connection. They've got a relatively small connector. It's not very large. And if you look at some of the other ones, they're super cumbersome and super weird looking and very large and awkward. And they take up a lot of space and they're, just hanging off the car looking ugly as hell. But anyway, it's not the ugliness. The aesthetics does matter, but it's actually much more about the capabilities of it. And essentially you've got two leads that have power and you've got a ground, and that's it. And that's really all you need. All of these other ones with these extra doodads and so forth are kind of useless. But beyond that is the software that's involved too, the hardware software. Because essentially when you come up to the car, you point the button, you go click, the little hatch opens, you plug it in, and the supercharger negotiates with your car, obviously figures out, the car talks to it and says, hey, I'm a car, I've got this much battery power left. And the supercharger says, hey, I'm this supercharger. And what account are you associated with? And it says, I'm associated with John's account, right? And then it says, okay, do I need to bill you? Do you have some free supercharger miles? In my case, I have a free year right now, which is awesome. But anyway, so it negotiates all of that stuff and then immediately begins charging. There's literally, you just plug it in and you walk away and you come back in 20 minutes or half hour or however long you want to charge this thing for. So it is so dirt simple. The problem is that I know that Tesla is much more open than Apple has always been, but the problem is that unless Tesla aggressively licenses this, and I'm not just talking about saying, yeah, other people can use our superchargers. What I'm talking about is licensing the actual interconnect. And it's not just the physical form. Of course, the physical form is super easy, right? That anybody can manufacture, well, I mean, any manufacturer can manufacture a piece of plastic with those particular types of leads, no big deal. What I'm talking about is the hardware software stack that allows the thing to be completely seamless where you pull it off the supercharger number 2 at this particular location, you plug it in, and all the negotiation is done, including charging your credit card or whatever needs to happen. All of that just happens. What I'm afraid of is if we don't standardize on that particular plug architecture and that particular software hardware stack, we're going to end up with something dumbed down and stupid and much, much more complicated to use. And that's a darn shame. Europe has already moved in that direction, of course, and kudos to them for standardizing on something. But at the same time, I don't know that plug architecture, and I don't know if it's better or worse than Tesla's, but I fear that what would happen, at least in the US, is that we'll end up getting stuck with a really dumb architecture that will be stupid, and we'll have all this cumbersome stuff we have to do every single time we go and we want to fill up our cars. So what about the negatives? Well, the first big negative is for Tesla itself, which is that consumers purchase Teslas because of the supercharger network. That's a big reason. We know that they're all over the place. You can pull up, you can plug in, and you can get charged. So that would take away a major advantage for Tesla in terms of sales. Number 2, of course, is that Tesla has put out a massive amount of money to build out this infrastructure, and they deserve to get something back for that. And number 3, for us consumers in particular, is overcrowding, right? If we have all of these car manufacturers, if suddenly the Nissan Leaf and the Ford Mach-E and the VW ID3 and ID4 and et cetera, can all come and use the Tesla superchargers, they're already really crowded. I've been to some of the superchargers where fortunately I have not had to wait in line yet, but there's been like 1 or 2 slots left. And so, you know, if you had twice or 3 times as many automobiles using that network or that particular charging station, you would suddenly have a big problem and you would be waiting in line. So for us consumers, there's a negative too. So what are the upsides? Number 1, ease of use. It would be very, very, very much easier for us consumers to use. Number 2, if it became a standard and was licensed by Tesla for a reasonable amount of money, then other companies like Electrify America or PlugShare, et cetera, could utilize that particular plug architecture. Also, could standardize on it, and then of course they could have adapters for older cars, but that would allow everybody to have that. So if the Tesla supercharger was totally full, but there was an Electrify America across the street, I could go there and utilize that charger instead. What do we do about Tesla's, the fact that they've put out a considerable amount of money, and this is a major advantage to Tesla in selling their cars? Well, I think the two things are actually related, and it comes down to money. So I would say that what they need to do, of course, is they should license their plug technology, the part that actually sticks out, to other companies for very, very little money. So Electrify America, PlugShare, etc. Anybody who wants to build these things out should have to pay a relatively small amount of money to have that particular plug architecture built in, and then probably some hardware software that has to go along with it. So basically at cost plus maybe $100 or $50 per station or something. So they don't charge a ton for that. But what they could do is they could charge more for automobiles, right? If a standard electric automobile, maybe they could do it on a percent, I don't know. But anyway, if a standard electric automobile is going for $45,000 or $50,000 right now, charging $500 or $600 or $1,000 or something is not outrageous, and it would allow all these companies to standardize. Now, if one company is making more of a profit than others on this, then I could see NHTSA or whoever, I don't even know who the regulatory agency would be for architectures for plugs or etc. Maybe it's the NTSB. Anyway, but I think that they would have to do it, perhaps open it up to third parties to manufacture it, and that's what they would do. They would charge a licensing fee, but they wouldn't necessarily manufacture it, so they wouldn't make all the profits. So, you get around that monopoly issue. But I think that the advantage of it to consumers is going to be huge. Effectively, you will make this easier. It is easier to go to a Tesla supercharger than it is to go to the gas station, because you don't have to have your credit card. You don't have to do the whole stupid thing where you're putting it in and you're typing in the numbers and all that kind of garbage, right? You just plug it in and it goes. So Tesla would have to build out, I'm sure that a lot of what happens in their inference engine, like all of that stuff in the front of the car is probably dealing with the stuff in the back of the car. So that's an issue, but I think that it could be done if an automobile, so this would be for newer automobiles, you wouldn't really retrofit older ones, but if they license the technology, it would kind of all sit there by the plug. And when you plugged it in, if the car has access to internet data, it would use that. Otherwise, it would have to default to using Bluetooth or something with your phone, and your phone app would have to do the communication with the Tesla charging network or whatever. But in any case, it should be fairly seamless. And it shouldn't add that much cost to cars. And again, if it was all standardized, the cost would come down eventually. But so that's what I'm saying. So rather than building out just the plug itself, I'm actually talking about the shape of the plug, but more importantly, the hardware and software that you could just build this into a chip or a small motherboard or something like that, that would communicate back and forth between the supercharger and or all the other charging networks and your automobile, and you would have an account that had your, some sort of monetary thing like a credit card associated with it, and it would just take care of all of this stuff and you would never have to think about it. So that would be fantastic. And then companies, if Ford wanted to offer 2 years of free charging with their new Mach-E purchase or something, then that's up to them. The negotiation would be between Ford and the Tesla supercharger network or whichever other network. They would then utilize the money, they'd pay the money back and forth. So it'd all get taken care of under the hood. And of course, in terms of crowding, the more of these things we get built out and the more standardized they become, the less there is pressure on any individual one. So it's the same thing. If there's a gas station here and there's a gas station over here, then you can always go across the street if the other one's got a ton of people on it, even if it's slightly cheaper. And of course, the other thing that Tesla can do is charge more for other cars to use their network. So it could make it somewhat less appealing. So again, just like a gas station, right? You go to one and it might be $2.70 a gallon and the other one is $2.40, or sorry, probably not that big a difference, but let's say $2.60 a gallon. So you can make a difference whether the convenience of this one here is more outweighs the 10 cents cheaper. But so if you did per kilowatt hour instead of like 21 cents a kilowatt hour or something, they charged other companies or other automobiles like 25 or 30 cents a kilowatt hour. That would eventually make the money back that Tesla has outlaid to build out their network. So that would be a way for them to recoup the money that they put into the network without having to be proprietary, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, there's the pros and the cons. I believe the pros very, very much outweigh the cons. My really big fear is that they're saying that they're open, but they're not really aggressively pushing this. I think that they should aggressively court other auto manufacturers and say, even if they have to move this entire charging thing to some sort of external entity to standardize on it, I think that would be all to the good. I think they should really push for this to happen. There could be a little bit of short-term pain, but Tesla, they got a really good architecture. That's the biggest thing in my mind. It's not even the fact that all of these are different and we've got this heterogeneous system, and that's ridiculous right now because you can always buy little pieces of plastic to adjust from one to another. But it's the fact that Tesla's architecture is really, really good. The interface is so good. It's just so easy to use. And other ones are so much more clunky. And if Tesla doesn't move on this and they don't get this licensed as a standard, all of us consumers are going to lose out. And even given the fact that Tesla might lose a little bit of money on the front end, they could make it back by charging more money to other auto companies for using the electricity on their superchargers if they wanted to. And of course, people are free to go to other ones if they want to also. But in any case, I think for the good of society, if nothing else, that Tesla really, really, really needs to aggressively license their plug-in architecture and try to make it a standard, at least in the United States. I think it might be too late for Europe, unfortunately, but there's many other countries in the world. So try to standardize on that as fast as possible. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it fun and thought-provoking. If you did, definitely let me know in the comments, and please do like and subscribe for more of this. I have a very special Patreon announcement today. I know that I don't have tiers on Patreon, and most people give a couple of dollars, and I really appreciate that. And I know how difficult it is. I've been a poor graduate student, so I don't request that anyone give a certain amount. But Corey Coddington, I want to give you a very special shout out. You have donated more than anybody else, and I really, really appreciate your pledge. I thank you so much for that, and I wanted to give you a very special shout out. So even though we don't have tiers, you get a very special one today. Also, don't forget about our merch store, which has this awesome Tesla plaid logo. We also have the Don't Mess with Tesla t-shirt and many other things, so check that out. And don't forget, we are Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how clicking on a link and going shopping will help out the channel. Thank you. And don't forget to ask me questions in the comments or at my email address, which is drknowitallknows@gmail.com. Till next time, bye-bye.